So Don, I understand from your colleagues that after a Dewberry employee earns their first license, engineer, architect, surveyor, you set up a coffee chat with these professionals, which is awesome and admirable. I love that you do that. And what I want to know from you is, tell us a little bit about what you've learned from these discussions. What are the kind of things that your team members are asking you? What do you try to impress upon them? I think it's a great initiative. Talk to us about it.
First, I think professional licensure, no matter what your discipline is the most significant professional milestone you're going to have in your career. And for technical folks, whether it's architects, engineers, or scientists, that happens at a relatively young age. But what I really try to do is where I am in my career generationally, I want to connect back into the younger generation and get a sense of what are important elements to them, both personally and professionally. And with a credential, like professional licensure, it's a personal credential. It's not a firm credential. And it's important for that employee to understand that. It's important for our organization to value that economically because it is a significant credential.
Civil engineering is about people. Yes, there's bridges and buildings and funding and policies, but it's at the heart about people. And in today's episode, I am lucky to have with me Don Stone. Don is a licensed professional engineer. He is the CEO of Dewberry. He's also served our country as a captain in the U.S. Army. And what Don's going to talk about is how Dewberry has focused on people to help them grow in a very sustainable and successful way. They focus on their employees and do things like coffee chats, which means he actually reaches out and talks with all of their first-time licensed professionals to congratulate them and learn about their careers. I mean, that's powerful in a company that big. He talks about how they engage with their clients when they think about, how to best deliver a project, how to best fund a project. And they also engage with the community to make sure that that project serves its best purpose. He even talks about acquisitions and their strategy for aligning that with their employees and providing more opportunities. This is an awesome episode. I'm so thrilled to share it with you. I am Anthony Fasano, and this is the Civil Engineering CEO. Let's do it. All right, now I'd like to welcome my guest onto the show for today. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me Don Stone. Don is the CEO of Dewberry. Don, welcome to the Civil Engineering CEO Show.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate the invite and look to share some thoughts.
Yeah, really happy to have you. And Don, I'd love for you to start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, about Dewberry. How large is the company? How many employees do you have?
Sure. First, Dewberry is a family-owned organization. So it's of our size and our industry, it's unique to have a fully 100% family-owned company. We have about 2,500 employees, and we have about 54 offices across the country. The vast majority of our work is domestic U.S. We work in three primary markets: the federal market, the state and local market, and the commercial markets. We are about $700 million in gross revenue annual in 2024.
Wow, that's great. And tell me about yourself. I mean, I think as an engineer myself, I think a lot of engineers aspire to get to leadership positions at some point in the future, but they don't necessarily think they're going to end up as a CEO. So take us a little bit through your career journey and when you decided, I think leadership's for me, and take us through that a little bit.
Probably initially was military background. Went to a boarding military high school, and I went to the Citadel, a military college in South Carolina. Then I served in the Army as a combat engineer. So certainly that was foundational on some of the leadership skill sets that I was able to develop. As I transitioned out of the military into private practice, I've been working in a consulting environment really since then. So it's at least a 40-year run in the private sector. A couple of things that really helped me through that process. One is grounding myself technically, understanding the business side. I have a BS in civil from the civil engineering from the Citadel. And so I wanted to kind of hone that craft and understand what we were delivering to our clients. And then I had some excellent opportunities to have some direct client interface as a project manager, managing major wastewater projects in the private sector of the pharmaceutical industry. I had the opportunity then to be a client manager for some significant clients for my firm at the time. And that really forced me into what a lot of our technical people have to deal with, which is I'm a classic off-the-charts introvert. All right. So the first step of dealing with that is recognizing that you've got as an introvert, you've got to master certain skills where you have to overcome some of those natural tendencies. So understanding your effective DISC profiles and understanding what makes you tick, and then how to adjust some of those natural tendencies when you're in the world trying to accomplish certain objectives. And I think certainly recognizing that introvert makeup, and then being able to manage that when I'm in a interactive role with clients initially, and then as you get more into leadership roles, you have to demonstrate many extrovert kinds of traits. And as an introvert, you just have to know who you are, what makes you tick, and then how you can modify those behaviors to accomplish the end game that you're trying to accomplish, in motivating people, motivating clients, motivating boards of directors. So that was one of the big ahas, was just really understanding what my tendencies were, and then how I could master those tendencies to use them as a strength, and know how to adjust those to really accomplish the end game that we're trying to accomplish.
That's great. And I really appreciate everything you said there, because from all the work that we've done training and developing leaders in the AEC industry, I think the one challenge is that you can't necessarily teach people that you need, which is confidence. And I think a lot of the stuff that you just said, Don, probably helped you to build your confidence, right? Getting out there and talking with clients. And, I like to say pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone as early as you can in your career if you want to get into leadership. And so I'm glad that you referenced those points, because you can sign up for classes, you can read books, you can do all that stuff. But the confidence that you need to go out there, get up in front of a public meeting, get up in front of a team, right? Deal with a client, tell them that you need to ask them for extra money on an extra work order, right? Those things are, you need confidence for that. And I think if you're out there listening, yes, take the courses, yes, get on the management track, but get hands-on experience where you can start to get comfortable with some of those activities.
Absolutely. And Anthony, one of the things we stress here at Dewberry is a concept I actually learned in the military, which was right seating. Right? When the person in front of you goes down, somebody has to step up into that role. And what we do here, and we work pretty hard on, is right seating junior staff with senior staff when they're visiting clients, when they're attending project management meetings, so that we can get that experience. A right seat comes from the driver of a car sits on the left side, all right, and the passenger's out right. So when somebody's right seating, they're not driving the car, but they're certainly learning a lot of the tricks and traits that you need to have to be successful in those different environments.
That's great. I love that mentality, and I wish it was done more. I think sometimes in the corporate world, people tend to shy away from that because they feel like, oh no, this person's going to take my job. But I think we all know that to build the right organization, you need a lot of people that are adaptable. I mean, look what happened. I think COVID was a wake-up call for a lot of AEC firms, saying we need flexibility, we need adaptability, we need people to be to step in and out of different roles. So I like that right seat. I like that mentality a lot. That's awesome.
It's worked well for us. And I think, and at the end of the day, it's hard to relinquish that, right? I mean, the client is your primary source of success.
Yeah.
And to share that is not easy to do. But once you break down that barrier, what I found is our clients really enjoy seeing that depth, seeing that developmental skill sets, because they're looking for long-term relationships. And having a number two that's right seating and developing an understanding of how and where that client thinks has been an important step for us.
Yeah, that's great. And that really also speaks to one of our biggest challenges as technical professionals, which is taking the next step in our career, because we love the detailed work, right? We were trained on that. That's what we did out of school. And all of a sudden, one day someone wants you to give it away, which can be kind of daunting, to be honest with you. So I think having the mindset of, if you want to get promoted and go to the next level, you can't keep doing everything you used to do, plus everything you're expected to do. It's just, there's a time management crunch. So the more you can mentor the next generation and then set the client expectation, as you said, Don, which is important. Like, hey, Don's working with me now. We both know everything about the project. We're both going to work with you a little bit more, and easing them into it. Personally, from a client perspective, I would feel good about that, because you have a little redundancy on your project, right?
Exactly. And that's what we see is now all of a sudden you have someone that could sit in on a meeting, and now you also have someone else you can call if the primary contact was busy. And it just kind of develops. And then at that right seater, they're starting to develop exactly what you're saying, which is that personal self-confidence and professional self-confidence to be able to operate in those environments. Because as we learn, many of the clients are our same age, right? And
Right.
grow up. I mean, most of the client contacts I have kind of aged out. But the right seaters that we brought along are equal to the right seaters on the other side of the table with our clients. So it's been a successful program for us. We see great success in our client management program, and our sales and our growth has been pretty spectacular over the last decade as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I don't want to gloss over that what Don just said about kind of the progression of people within their organizations, because I know a lot of times I encourage younger engineers to get out there to those networking events. And if I ever get any feedback like, well, I'm kind of only networking with people the same age as me, I want to network with some people that are more experienced. Well, they're going to go and progress at the same rate as you. And, in 5, 10 years, those people that you've been building relationships with are the people that are going to be the decision makers in those companies at those times. So, that's an important point. I'm glad you brought that up.
But the more you give up, the more you get back.
Right. Yeah, that's true too as well. And that's a good part of it. And that's a good part of growing, quite frankly,
Absolutely.
as a professional. So so Don, I understand from your colleagues that after a Dewberry employee earns their first license, engineer, architect, surveyor, you set up a coffee chat with these professionals, which is awesome and admirable. I love that you do that. And what I want to know from you is tell us a little bit about what you've learned from these discussions. What are the kind of things that your team members are asking you? What do you try to impress upon them? I think it's a great initiative. Talk to us about it.
Absolutely. First, I think professional licensure, no matter what your discipline is the most significant professional milestone you're going to have in your career. And for technical folks, whether it's architects, engineers, or scientists, that happens at a relatively young age. So it's really important to celebrate that. So in essence, this is a form of celebration, right? I want to personally congratulate and thank these folks for achieving that objective. And, they're not all young. Some have waited 25 plus years to get their licensure, and that's a great accomplishment. But what I really try to do is where I am in my career and generationally, I want to connect back into the younger generation and get a sense of what are important elements to them, both personally and professionally. And with a credential like professional licensure, it's a personal credential. It's not a firm credential. And it's important for that employee to understand that. It's important for our organization to value that economically because it is a significant credential. But connecting back to that younger generation clearly is a benefit to me because I get to understand how they're thinking, where their priorities are, what they want to do, what they see as barriers, how we're doing as a company, where we need to maybe channel our focus a little differently. So that's an important element that I learned from. Secondly, it's not lost on me that the highest turnover rate in our profession is in that 3 to 7 year period of time. That's typically when folks are getting licensed. So if I can connect deeper with them and show some real connection at that level, I think that's really going to help our retention of that vulnerable period of time. I tell all these folks, I said, you're now on a list as professional licensure. And on that list, people are going to start calling you, offering you jobs. And I would ask them, and I ask each of them to reach out to me if you get some of those calls, because we now have a professional network, and I want to make sure that the offer is sound. It's in your best interest. Sometimes it is, most times it's not, but really want to drive that connection for retention because that's just an important part of our overall population is getting that 3 to 7 year individual to stay with us because they're trained up, they're seeing additional responsibilities, great opportunities for them. And we need to make sure that they're realizing those opportunities.
I think that's wonderful. In fact, I can speak from firsthand experience when I worked at an ENR 500 firm out of school. When I got my license, our CEO did the same thing. He took us out to lunch every batch of PEs. And I thought it was amazing for a young professional to be able to interact with our leadership at the highest levels like that and give some feedback and give some thoughts and really, quite frankly, be celebrated. I thought it was nice because I agree with Don that it's probably the biggest accomplishment in your career. I mean, I'm really passionate about it. In fact, for those of you out there listening, we actually have 2 totally free YouTube channels, Pass the FE exam and Pass the PE exam, with hundreds of videos and problems to help you. And every time I get an email from someone saying it helped them, it's great because to me, that's your future, right? No one could take that away from you once you have it. And if you're on the fence about getting your license, get off the fence and sign up and start going because it's going to be a game changer for you. And Don, I think that this is probably part of your military background, but I think that initiative that you do with the coffee chats is really a kind of a lead by example, lead with authenticity way to reach out to people, even at the highest levels and say, hey, we're a big company. we're really busy, but it's worth the time, invest to get to know our future leaders,
Absolutely.
especially recognize an accomplishment that I think requires a lot of time and effort. Let's be honest. I mean, you got to take a couple of 8-hour exams and get a lot of experience in between. But at the same time, that's a commit that show like when I used to interview people, if I see that they had their EIT and they were on the path, that shows commitment.
Mhm.
I mean, you have to be committed to your profession to go through a licensure process as rigorous as that. So it's awesome to see, that Dewberry celebrates that with their team members.
And Anthony, I'd also, share that this is a change in their role in our industry. Up to the point of licensure, they're the student. Once they get the license, they have to become the teacher. And that role needs to be clearly communicated to them that you're now supposed to be mentoring and developing staff behind you. And that's kind of an aha moment for some of them. Some have already have taken on that task and project management role and are leading teams or leading technical elements. But clearly they have to understand that the obligation that we have now as a professional is to give back. And that's an important aha for them to get and to then transfer, okay, I got it. Now I have things to offer. I need to start doing that. That's an obligation I have as a professional.
Right seat.
Right seat.
So Don, after plateauing briefly, acquisition rates in our industry seem to be picking up again. How is Dewberry looking at acquisitions as a way to grow its business?
Yeah. Thanks. And yeah, they have taken off. It's been an interesting, probably last 5 to 10 years in the acquisition market. We classically do an acquisition maybe every other year. It augments our organic growth. Our primary objective is to provide professional development and growth for our employees, right? And when you do that, it's a lot of that growth has to be organic because you acquire, in theory, you're bringing in that leadership, and that has potential of stunting some opportunities for junior staff. So what we really are focused on is our organic growth is very important. However, we need to augment our technical capabilities and our geographies, and acquisitions has been very important in driving that kind of change for our organization. Currently, the market is pretty expensive. The multiples on acquisitions is pretty high. We like to date potential acquisitions, team with them, get to understand how the cultural fit works, understand their capabilities, their leadership. And in fact, when we do an acquisition, it's typically because we've had a long-term relationship. We're not in an open market scenario because the multiples are just too high. We don't need to grow for any other reason to create opportunities for our people. We're a privately held company, and that means that we really don't have to drive to the market or other things that maybe some other public companies have to work with. Ours is about keeping our employees and creating opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love hearing that. Really what I'm taking away from what we've talked about so far here is that Dewberry is a very people first organization. I mean, and you don't have the CEO doesn't have coffee chats with everyone that gets a PE license unless you're focused on people's growth. And I like approaching acquisitions that way too, because you're right. I mean, if it's just a top line deal,
Yeah.
then it's not necessarily putting the people first and what opportunities, because I agree with you. You can open up some awesome opportunities by partnering or acquiring with the right company that could bring you into other markets. And that's something that me, if I'm working there now, I didn't have access to before. Now I do, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think looking at it from that perspective is great. And I really, really like your approach of almost like an agile approach of partnering with them first, testing things out, see how things are going. It's funny, this is kind of a personal analogy, but I remember when my kids wanted to get a dog, I was like, "You know what? Why don't we foster a dog first, right? Try it out. We have to walk the dog. You have to learn how to feed the dog. It's a life-changing experience." But firms that we work with when we do PM training or leadership training, they often say, "We acquired a company, now we got to get them trained." And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of integration. So I think making sure that it's the right partner is so important. And I like thinking about it in terms of the development of your people and how can they grow, right, for people in both organizations once you marry the two together.
Yeah. And our horizon on whether we deem an acquisition successful or not is 8 years. So it's not something that is just let's do it and if it didn't work in the first 12 months, let's adjust fire. That's not how we operate. It's really an 8-year kind of look back and see, and did it accomplish the objectives we wanted to accomplish, both financially, penetration of market, additional client base, those kinds of things are what we would gauge it at. But that's a pretty long, for our industry, that's a pretty long horizon to be assessing success on an acquisition, but it allows you to have the opportunity for full integration of the acquisition. It allows for the staff in that acquired company to see how they fit into our organization and our path forward as far as their growth personally and professionally.
That's great. And again, it shows a real commitment to full integration because
Yeah,
you're giving it that leash that you need to make sure that it happens the right way,
absolutely.
which is awesome. So, Don, project funding continues to be a dynamic aspect of our industry. How does Dewberry approach this with its clients?
Yeah. First and foremost, we're a community-based organization. So we pride ourselves on doing projects within our community, having our staff look at those projects, take their families to those projects, generation over generation, right? Because what we do lasts hopefully generations. So that's one of the ways that we look at that connectivity to funding as well. So if we're integrated into our community, and that community could be at the local level, could be at the state level, could be at the federal level, could be in the commercial sector as well. So how we connect finances to that is obviously in a lot of grant writing types of opportunities, which we've been doing forever. It goes way back to the Clean Water Act days, right? Back in the 60s and 70s. So clearly grant writing has been an important part, and also looking for opportunities, especially with things like the infrastructure funding that has come about in the last 3 or 4 years, is how do we connect clients' needs to financial resources, whether that's at the state or federal level. And we have teams that work across the country to look for that type of connectivity. And our market intelligence has grown as we get an understanding more of where the funding is. Now, the dynamics change, right? I mean, the last month has been pretty dynamic in industry. So staying connected to our clients is extremely important right now, and how funding is going to mature from this. It's almost anyone's guess at this point. But if we stay focused on our clients and our clients' needs, then I think we can find the way to connect the right resources, financial resources to our clients' needs.
That's great. Yeah, I think this is such an important topic in civil engineering that sometimes people don't think about. I mean, yes, our clients want us to help them get their projects approved, their permits, get things moving. But in today's world, like with the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, like Don mentioned, you have to also be able to help them get that funding, acquire that funding, find that funding. And that's how another source of you being able to provide value as a consultant. It's a whole, 360 approach here. And again, I'll come back to it again, but Don's mentioned Dewberry's approach of how can it best help the client, right? And that goes back to like with the acquisitions, how can it best help our team members, right? Our employees. So again, I think having a really strong goal or purpose behind your initiatives helps you to stay focused with it, helps you to make smart decisions around it, right? Like the 8-year horizon, right? Because you have a very clear purpose and something that you're anchored to. So I think it's great to hear that that's kind of a trend for you in your leadership at Dewberry.
Right. And I think, I have to give a lot of credit to our executive chair, Barry Dewberry, who I consider really to be our cultural officer. He calls all new employees and personally welcomes them to the firm. And he'll randomly call, he'll see a project come across and he didn't know we were pursuing this client. He'll call the project manager and just wants to learn more about the project. And I think, when you talk about acquisitions and you talk about growth, whether it's organic or through acquisitions, maintaining that culture is extremely important to us. And so I've got a great partner in our executive chair to really foster that culture and to grow and develop the organization at a pace that we don't wake up in 10 years and not recognize ourselves. And that's one of his primary objectives as the executive chair and the chief culture officer.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love a lot of the personal touch things that we're talking about today, like the coffee chats and the phone calls to new employees and all that stuff. I was just telling our team members this morning, I just finished this book called The Book of Joe, which is like about Joe Madden, who was a Major League Baseball manager who got the Cubs to win a World Series after 100 years. And he took the Tampa Bay Rays to the World Series. And he talked about how, he's really people oriented. Like it's all about getting the right people in the organization and connecting with them. And then towards the end of his career, it was very AI, and baseball has become very analytics driven. And so they would tell him like, these 5 people can't pitch tonight from the bullpen because they've exceeded their numbers for the week. And for him, like he would talk to his pitchers, and he knew how they felt. And he knew that if they could pitch today, they felt stronger when they threw more pitches. And he's like, that's all been taken away from me, like as a manager. So You reminded me a lot of that when you talk about the interaction with people and keeping a heartbeat on what the people really want in your organization. As much as we have all these AI and tools that give us data that are great, you still need to have that heartbeat on people.
It's still we're a people organization, right? Our industry is about people.
Yeah.
It's kind of the bottom line. And if once we forget that, then we really tend to get into a lot of trouble. So yes, clearly, our biggest asset, and a lot of my industry peers will tell you this is not on our balance sheet because it's our people. And the critical thing about people, especially in today's environment with the shortage of technical talent, is that you have to recognize that every employee is a volunteer. They volunteer to come into the office every day. They volunteer to go home, and they could easily volunteer to go to someplace across the street. And that's the kind of mindset we have to have, is that they're really our volunteers, and they come in and they could easily go somewhere else. And in the war on talent, the best way you could win that battle is stay really close to your people and understand where their value proposition is and make sure they're deployed to it. And we've worked really hard also on the concept of across the country collaboration, and I found that to be a very good process of keeping the energy level of our staff up. And imagine if you're sitting in Birmingham, Alabama, as a mechanical engineer, your client base has been dominantly that local market. And now all of a sudden you have an opportunity to work on a significant project with the MTA in New York City, which is a unique place to work. And
Right, right.
think about that young or middle-aged engineer and the opportunity to work on some of those highly creative projects that are world-class today, in a different geography, and still be able to go home at night every night. So
Yeah.
those collaboration has really been important to garnish additional expertise, experiential expertise, and also create relationships internally, so that when we have downturns, and we've been around long enough to know there's ups and downs in the business,
Yeah.
that now they have relationships and a professional network internally that really allows for them to fill gaps of work when their economy might turn down in the future, and also find assets to help them with projects when they're on the upside as well on some projects.
Yeah. No, that flexibility and opportunity is a big deal there. That's awesome. Don, you've worked extensively with different delivery models: design, build, own, operate, P3s. Can you talk a little bit about some of these innovative project financing and delivery methods and how they can really benefit the clients, but also the communities?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think each one of those are a tool in toolbox, right?
Yes.
They don't apply across all situations, all clients, all types of projects. So I think that the challenge we have as an industry is to select the right tool for the client's problems, and how the client is. Some clients like to be extremely hands-on, and some of those delivery methods don't allow for a lot of direct hands-on on the development of design concepts and fielding of projects. So clients that like that want to maybe go a little more traditional. Some clients want to completely transfer the project to a third party, so a triple P type of project works very well for that scenario. Some clients are in a real rush to get their projects in the ground, and maybe design build works best for those kinds of projects as well. So I think we try to be very flexible. We work in all those different venues, and we want to make sure we're in a more prime position on the traditional methods as an AE firm. Some we're in the back seat to a contractor, and sometimes we're in the back seat to a contractor who's in the back seat to a concessionaire. And recognizing our role as the advisor to the team is important. And one thing that we bring also is a significant amount of confidence in the team to the client, because classically as consulting AE people, we typically develop those strong bonds with the clients, and there's a lot of trust built through that bond. And that helps our team, whatever the method is, to be successful at the end of the day, because if the client's successful, then we're all successful.
Yeah, that's great. And again, like I think what we're kind of taking away, what I'm taking away from Don here today so far is, you know, the way to be a great leader is you have to understand the people you're engaging with and try to meet them kind of where they are and what their needs are, right?
Yeah.
Having the coffee chats, connecting with the younger generation. What are your needs? when you're dealing with a client, understanding from a funding source, what are your needs? How can we help you? How can we get you the money? When it comes to the community that we're delivering projects in, how can we help you? What kind of delivery system is going to be the best, right? I mean, that's really leadership. It's adapting. It's figuring out what works. It's that there's no equation in like an engineering school where you punch in the numbers and you hit the button and it gives you the leadership answer. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So that's a good thing for those out there that are, transitioning into leadership. And I know we have a lot of executives that listen to this show as well. I think it's a great takeaway. So Don, looking back on your 40 plus years in the industry, what would you say has been one of the most rewarding projects or initiatives that you've been a part of?
Well, I'd say one of the projects, and then I'll hit maybe an initiative after that. But one of the projects, and it'll seem relatively small and insignificant, but it was actually designing and building a head wall in the Army, head wall in a culvert system in Fort Polk, Louisiana. I was a platoon leader of a combat heavy platoon, and to take out my soldiers and equipment and design and construct a head wall system on that culvert. I don't know what the capital costs were because it was all military labor, but it was one of those projects. And my wife still gives me a hard time about it because it's the New Jersey Avenue was the name of the street it was on. And I call it the New Jersey Avenue Project. And she when I took her to see the project, she was extremely underwhelmed. So but that taught me a lot about the passion of taking an idea and turning it into something that was built and functioning. And I think as far as initiatives, what we've been able to accomplish here at Dewberry has been probably one of the most rewarding. I've been the CEO here for now almost 15 years. We've been able to see very significant growth. We've seen very good performance metrics across the board as an organization. We've been able to recruit and retain top talent. Our leadership team is unparalleled, I think, in the industry. So I'm extremely proud of what we've been able to accomplish here at Dewberry over the last decade and a half. Sounds like a long time, and it is.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So, Don, what final piece of advice can you give to fellow civil engineering CEOs, leaders, on how to balance innovation, because there's a lot of that going on today, which is great, but also tradition while effectively leading their firms? Because we do operate in kind of a traditional industry.
Yeah, I think, I get a lot of feedback on, the tech side of the business, and, AI is a big buzzword right now. All those kinds of things, are kind of pulling at our ears of trying to get attention. But, there's just two things, and I may sound like a broken record here, but what about our clients? And what are they willing? What is their adoptive rate of technology, of change? Because most of our clients are building things to last 50 to 100 years. So innovation needs to be measured maybe over a longer horizon than today. So what is our client's appetite for that is probably number one. And number two, it's our people. So we have to continually demonstrate the pace of change that happens in tech and embrace where we can embrace it, because that's going to be important for retention. But we have to manage that closely because technology is very expensive, and not all innovation comes from technology. I would argue innovation comes from people and their thoughts and how they deploy those thoughts to solve problems. And I think as long as we're deploying those thoughts and problem solving skills to our clients' problems, that marriage is going to be very successful for both them. And if it's success for them, it'll be successful for us.
That's great. And again, it's kind of marrying the AI and the technology with people. Again, we keep coming back to people today, kind of putting them together in a way that they can be successful, but you're not losing that personal touch, which in our industry, to me, is really everything, because that's how we build relationships. It's how we build client relationships. We work with communities. Everything revolves around people. So, well, Don Stone, Don's a licensed professional engineer, CEO at Dewberry. Don, first of all, thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for your time today, because you shared a lot of great, I think, advice that the younger professionals listening, as well as the leaders in our industry, are really going to be able to take and build on. Thank you so much, Don.
Anthony, thank you for your time. Appreciate the opportunity.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Don. I mean, he was amazing. He really just gave us so much wisdom from his long and successful career as a CEO. And I hope that you can take some of what he talked about and really implement it in your career and become the best leader that you can be. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our channel here. We put episodes like this out on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and leaders. I'll see you next week.